radius. If you know your anatomy, look at his skeleton. I'll show you the skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. You'll see. If you know your anatomy, look at his skeleton. I'll show you the skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. You'll see the single bullet theory. Arlen Specter came up with the idea that would solve the day that would take care of this seemingly impossible physical incongruity. We don't have movable chairs here, do we? That's a shame. Can you get 2 chairs that move? The way they're sitting, and they're looking at the crowd, and they're waving, and the governor's got this white Stetson. It's a very nice hat, sir, and he's looking at the crowd. Okay. There, 6th floor, southeast corner, Texas School Book Depository building is Lee Harvey Oswald. Up there, he shoots. The bullet comes down and hits Kennedy a few inches below the crest of the shoulder, slightly to the right of the midline. For openers, under the single bullet theory, that bullet has an upward trajectory of 11.5 degrees. That's for openers. A bullet that's moving from up downward, from right to left, from back to front, hits here and exits here. How do my colleagues account for that? Well, they say, what if the president were bent over? He forgot to tie his shoelace, he's scratching his groin, you know. Well, don't take my word for it. Look at the Zapruder film. Kennedy was not doing that. He was looking at the crowd. He was enjoying himself, okay? So the bullet comes out. It's moving. It's not struck any bone. Possibly touched the vertebrae slightly. No deviation. Comes out. And the bullet is coming down, back to front, right to left, up, downward. Now, if the bullet struck Connolly over here, grazed his left shoulder, I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. What did the bullet do? The bullet came out, moving thusly, turns in midair, comes back about 20 inches, and slams into the governor behind the right armpit. The medical language, right posterior axillary area, which simply means behind the armpit. Hits him here. Okay? It now proceeds at a downward angle of 27 degrees, exits from below the level of the nipple, pierces first the right lung, destroys 5 inches of the right fifth rib anteriorly, comes up, it's moving downward, it swings up and around, slams into the governor's wrist, produces a common unit fracture of the distal radius, one of the 2 long bones from the elbow to the wrist. Remember, Connolly is 6'4", big bone Texan, not one of the young ladies here weighing 110, 15 pounds. It comes out then from the front of the wrist, and now it's moving at a downward angle of 45 degrees into his left thigh, goes down several inches, hits the femur, works its way back out into his clothing onto the stretcher, and as of April 1964, with the Warren Commission report, Single Bullet Theory, Commission Exhibit 399, the stretcher bullet, the hero of the single bullet theory, that bullet is now from John Connolly's left thigh. Let's recapitulate. Friday night, the autopsy, the stretcher bullet is from Kennedy's back. Saturday morning, the stretcher bullet is from Kennedy's neck. 5, 6 months later, under the single bullet theory, stretcher bullet is from Connolly's left thigh. Whatever you want, that bullet happily and readily obliges you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Mr. President. Let me tell you about the single bullet theory. In addition to this cockamamie trajectory, this bullet, as I've told you, destroyed 5 inches. I'm sure you know the rear skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. They're saying your anatomy, look at his skeleton. I'm sure you know the skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. You'll see. You know your anatomy, look at his skeleton. I'm sure you know the skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. You'll see. a skeleton. I'll show you the skeleton somewhere in the building for one of your classes. You'll see